wanted them to see the great work the team is doing here in Australia. And, we just had a session, actually, with a patient advocacy group. And it's a good example of what can be done in countries around the world, and looking at what Australia does. And there's a lot more that they can see. They're going to see the plant as well, which is a very important part of our operation here in Australia and globally, because we supply China from here. And the product we supply to China is a very, very important product for us, and it's exploding. I mean, the sales are growing rapidly. I want them to see the talent we have here. I think a country like Australia, even though from a business viewpoint is limited in size, it can really make a big contribution through the power of the ideas that come out of Australia, but also the power of the talent that comes out of the country. Yes, it is. You define. It's really interesting. A friend of mine, an American friend of mine, told me many years ago. He said, rivers flow downstream, and he said what that means is you're closer to your kids than to your parents, right? And I think the conclusion is you are where your kids are from, you're not from where your parents are. Mm-hmm. And of course you can't change your roots. I mean, I'm stuck with my accent. I'll keep it for the rest of my life. But in the end, you're sort of where your kids are from, and then where especially my grandson is from. So I feel very much that I'm from here in the end, and that's where I will retire. I always think of Australia as a sophisticated market. And it was the same when I was at Roche. We had a very I'm sure they still have a very sophisticated team in Australia here. And I always saw Australia as a place where you can actually identify talented people. You can also identify new ideas. You can do good clinical trials. You have many opinion leaders in different fields that are Australian, especially in respiratory disease, but also in oncology. So it is a very sophisticated market where you can actually learn a lot and develop your people, develop your ideas. People were kind of probably thinking, lucky country because you got lots of mining resources, natural resources, and you can sit on the beach and just enjoy life and then enjoy the selling natural resources. So it was a bit pejorative, and in fact, there's a lot more to Australia than this, of course, as we know. I mean, to some extent, I would still think it's a lucky country because it's but lucky country in a good way is that there's a number of things that are actually going very well in the culture in particular. What I think is missing in this country, and it sort of breaks my heart in many ways, is that there's a lot more the country, the government as a whole could do to kind of stimulate emergence of new industries. And of course, mining is important, but industries of the future, whether it's digital, whether it's life sciences, and some of the new industries, I think Australia can leverage that because there's a lot of very strong knowledge, good education, a number of world-class academic centers. You could leverage all of this and then sort of try to help it. And I understand the sense of, or the willingness to have a sort of a liberal approach and kind of let the market, if you will, drive things and decide. But to some extent, sometimes you also need to help things, right? Get things together. And that's a pity because I think Australia could do a lot more. And I'm not saying that government should be active and directive and deciding. I mean, I'm not in that kind of camp. I'm just saying that sometimes you can actually create, again, an ecosystem of government, industry, investors working together to try and create the right setup. This sort of attitude of we don't get involved in anything, we just let things happen by themselves. Might work in the US because it's gigantic, but in a smaller country, you really have to help a little bit. I mean, if you look at Sweden, which I know quite well because our companies have Swedish originally, I can tell you the government is sort of helping, but on top of it, there is a couple of actors there. For instance, the Wallenberg Foundation. The Wallenberg Foundation has enormous amount of money, and they invest that money in biotechs and in academic research, etc. So they participate in creating that ecosystem, if you will. So I think Australia could do this, pick a few centers, Melbourne or Sydney, and sort of try to put it together. I mean, I think it should be an enabler in many ways, because it's sort of, I mean, the mining industry is really an industry that's creating a lot of economic value. But it should not basically develop at the expense of other industries. For instance, it should not be trying to block IP rights. I mean, if you want to be in innovation, you have to support IP, for instance. That's, I mean, the only way people will innovate is that if they know their IDs can be protected somehow. So, but other than that, I think it's an enabler because it's creating economic wealth. You know, I think it's interesting because we are in an industry that has extremely long cycles, right? And that's also why people have to understand that in our industry, investors take risks, and if it doesn't work, then their money is wasted. If it works, then they have to have a level of return that is commensurate with the risk they've taken, right? But long cycles, so it means if you're in a company that is doing well and has products that are doing well and still with long patent lives, then you can surf the wave for quite some time and do quite well, even if you don't manage the company very well, you can have a good time. But if the company has no new products and the older products are at the end of their patent life, then you really are in trouble. It takes a long time. So, you know, we didn't have any pipeline 5 years ago, and we had fantastic products like Crestor, Nexium, Seroquel that have really transformed the treatment of many diseases over the years, but they were at the end of their patent life. So since 2010, before I arrived, I think, or 2011, we've been in sales decline. We've been declining constantly. And we've invested a lot of money, and we have been, you know, fortunate enough to have a board that supported this and a set of shareholders who were patient. We've invested a lot of money in our pipeline, and if it had not worked, of course, it would have all been wasted money. But it has worked, and now we have a strong pipeline, and we're starting to launch those products, and the old products are completely out of patent protection, and you know, we are growing. And if you look at the next 5-6 years, we have no patent expiry ahead of us, or none of substance, and therefore we are going to grow for the next number of years. The question is, at what speed are we going to grow? But we will grow. Well, I mean, no, but I suddenly ask myself a couple of times, it better work, otherwise we're wasting a lot of money. And I won't be here tomorrow also, but the most important piece is not so much whether I'm here tomorrow or not, it's actually you have thousands of people who've believed in what we're trying to do, and everybody will be disappointed. But I always thought, you know, I didn't know exactly which ones would work, but I thought on an aggregate basis we have a number of very good projects, we should be able to make it work. In fact, what has worked better than I thought is oncology.